After my husband ripped my clothes and kicked me out into the freezing street, his mother laughed. "Let's see which beggar takes you in now." I dialed one number, and within half an hour, a line of Rolls-Royce cars pulled up. Hey everyone, can you imagine being utterly shattered, thrown out of your own home, practically naked by the man you loved, while his family laughs and records it? That was me, left for trash in an alley. They thought they'd broken me forever. Oh, how wrong they were. Because in less than an hour, the beggar they mocked would be the one to bring their entire empire crashing down. To understand how I went from being Sophia, a woman abandoned and humiliated, to the force that dismantled an entire family, we have to go back to that brutal night. Just an hour before, I was in what I thought was my home, my head still ringing from the slap. My husband, Ethan Hayes, the man I had loved for 5 years, suddenly looking at me with pure hatred, contempt, and a cruel delight. "Get out of my house right now, you useless woman who can't even give me a child," he snarled, each word a blade stabbing my bleeding heart. I looked up, tears blurring my vision. My mother-in-law, Carol, stood in the doorway, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. Beside her, Ethan's sister, Chloe, who cared only for parties and appearances, was shamelessly recording everything on her phone. "Ethan, get closer to her face. This will go viral if we post it online. How about cheating wife gets what she deserves?" Their cruelty, their perfect coordination, made me realize this wasn't a spontaneous outburst. This was a carefully orchestrated play they'd been rehearsing for a long, long time. And tonight was the final brutal act. With trembling hands, I tried to stand, pulling my thin, disheveled nightgown around me. "Ethan, calm down. I don't know what's happening, but let's talk," I pleaded, clinging to a faint thread of hope. But he gave me no chance. He lunged, grabbed my hair, and yanked my head back. I screamed in sharp pain. He dragged me towards the front door, ignoring my pleas, my struggles. "Talk. I have nothing more to talk to you about. You're useless to me now." Useless. Yes, that's all I had been to him for 5 years. A tool to be used. "Open the door, Mom," he yelled, and Carol quickly pulled it wide. The cold New York winter night, a biting wind, swept into the apartment, chilling me to the bone. The alley was empty, only the dim yellow light of a street lamp casting shadows. "Ethan, please don't do this. The neighbors will see us," I begged desperately. My fear, it seemed, only excited him more. He laughed cruelly. "The neighbors? Let them see what you're really like. Let's see if you dare to face anyone after tonight." Then he did something I will never forget. With all his might, he ripped the nightgown from my body. The tearing fabric was sharp, final. In an instant, I was exposed to the freezing air, to the malevolent gazes of his family. I screamed in horror, in utter humiliation, trying to cover myself with my arms. But it was too late. Chloe had already raised her phone, the camera shutter clicking over and over. "Wow, looking good, sis-in-law. This is going to break the internet." Her laugh sent a chill down my spine. Ethan shoved me violently out the door, and I tumbled down the cold concrete steps. He grabbed my purse, emptied its contents, my meager clothes, my few belongings, scattering them in the middle of the alley. "Get out and never come back," he growled. Then my mother-in-law stepped forward. She didn't look at me, but pointed a finger at a pile of smelly household garbage in the corner. "That's where you belong," she said, her voice dripping with contempt, a sneer twisting her every wrinkle. "Let's see if some beggar picks you up." After that, she went inside with her son, slamming the door. The deadbolt locked, echoing coldly, severing any connection to the place I once called home. I sat there, naked, in the dead of winter. The wind howled, chilling me, but the cold in my heart was far worse. The tears stopped, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. I felt I was no longer human, but something worse than that pile of trash. Lights in neighboring windows flickered on, then off. They heard, they saw, but no one came out. Maybe they were scared. Or maybe, like Ethan's family, they enjoyed my suffering. I huddled in the darkness, feeling like I would die from the cold and humiliation. Asterisk, what should I do? Where could I go? Asterisk, my mind was an abyss. Then, a faint glow caught my attention. My phone screen, which Ethan had thrown to the ground, shattered but still working. A thought, one I'd suppressed for 5 years, flashed in my mind. I crawled over, trembling, picked it up. My numb fingers could barely swipe. I went to my contacts, searched for last resort. It was the number my grandfather had forced me to memorize before I left home, with the warning, call only when you truly have nowhere else to go. For 5 years, no matter how hard, how humiliating, I had never dared to call. But tonight, I truly had nowhere else to go. I pressed call, held the cold phone to my ear. It rang once, twice. My heart pounded. Then a familiar voice, low, warm, yet strange, answered. A voice I hadn't heard in 5 years. Hello, Mr. Albright. My voice broke. After those 2 words, I couldn't continue. I burst into tears. Miss Sterling, is that you, miss? Where are you? Mr. Albright's voice was filled with panic and concern. I choked back my sobs, gave him the address of the alley. Please come get me, Mr. Albright. Miss, don't be afraid. I'm on my way immediately. Just hold on a little longer. He hung up. I dropped the phone, all strength leaving me. I had done it. I'd made the call, broken my promise, asked for help from the family I had abandoned. But I had no other choice. I rested my head on my knees and waited. Every second felt like an eternity. The wind grew colder. I slowly lost feeling in my body. I thought I couldn't hold on. Just then, a dazzling beam of light cut through the darkness from the end of the alley, followed by the low, majestic roar of an engine. A sound completely out of place here. 1, 2, and then 3. A motorcade of gleaming black Rolls-Royces glided silently towards me, like predatory beasts. The small alley was instantly illuminated. Window lights turned on again. This time, no one dared to turn them off. They were stunned, horrified, disbelieving. The motorcade stopped. The door of the lead car opened. Mr. Albright, impeccably dressed in a black suit, stepped out. Behind him, dozens of uniformed bodyguards emerged, forming a solid wall of protection around me. Mr. Albright took off his thick cashmere coat, placed it over my trembling body. The warmth, the pained look in his eyes. I couldn't hold back. I wept again. Miss Sterling, you've suffered so much, he said, his voice hoarse. It's time to go home. Would this return open a bright new chapter, or were more storms waiting? And when they discovered my true identity, what would my ex-husband's family face? Mr. Albright's coat enveloped me, but couldn't completely dispel the bone-deep chill. Without a word, he helped me up. The bodyguards immediately formed a human wall, shielding me from the curious, malicious gazes. I knew this alley was witnessing a scene they'd never forget. A woman abandoned like trash, picked up by a motorcade of luxury cars. The extreme contrast was more dramatic than any movie. Mr. Albright guided me to the lead Rolls-Royce. A bodyguard held the door open respectfully. He helped me into the back seat, then sat beside me. The door closed, and absolute silence, absolute warmth enveloped me, isolating me from the outside world. The car's heater slowly thawed my fingers and toes. I huddled in the oversized coat, staring out the window. The city's neon lights passed by like streaks of paint. The car moved silently, smoothly, retracing the path of my humiliation. It felt strange. I was no longer a pathetic victim. I was protected on my way to a safe place. But physical safety couldn't calm the storm in my soul. Ethan tearing my clothes, Carol pointing at the trash, Chloe's scornful smile. It all replayed in my mind like a horror film. What did I do wrong? I asked myself 1,000 times. For 5 years, I had given up my identity as the daughter of a billionaire family, abandoned a life of luxury to become an ordinary wife. I cooked, cleaned, cared for his family. I never asked for expensive gifts, never complained about a modest life. I did it all because I loved him, because I believed in his promise of a simple, happy family. What did I get? Betrayal, endless humiliation. I thought love could overcome anything. I was wrong. My love was wasted, given to a wolf in sheep's clothing, someone who only knew how to use and trample. Miss Sterling, have some ginger tea to warm up. Mr. Albright's voice pulled me from my thoughts. He offered a white porcelain cup, steaming ginger tea, the familiar warm aroma. It was the tea he used to make for me when I had a cold. He still remembered. I took the cup, my hands trembling, and the warmth spread through me. I took a sip. The gentle sweetness of honey, the spice of ginger, soothed my throat. "Thank you," I whispered. Mr. Albright looked at me, eyes full of pity and remorse. "It's my fault, Mississippi. I should have found you sooner. I shouldn't have let you go through this." Mr. Albright had looked after me since childhood, after my parents died. He was the one who managed everything for my grandfather. He was more than a butler. He was family. He was the one who tried hardest to dissuade me when I decided to leave everything for Ethan. But then I was blinded by love. "It's not your fault." I shook my head, tears welling again. I was the fool, the one who trusted the wrong person. Mr. Albright sighed. "Does the chairman know?" I asked, worried. My grandfather, Alexander Sterling, chairman of the Sterling Group, was a strict, authoritarian man. When I told him I was marrying Ethan, a man from an ordinary family, he was furious. He gave me an ultimatum: leave Ethan or leave the family with nothing. I chose love. For 5 years, I hadn't contacted my family, not out of hatred, but fear. Fear of disappointing him. Fear of showing him my not-so-prosperous life. I wanted to prove my choice was right. I had failed, miserably. I informed the chairman as soon as I received your call. Mr. Albright replied, "He is waiting for us at the estate. He is very worried." Very worried. My heart clenched. How could I face him? I dreaded the disappointment in his eyes. The car entered the tree-lined avenues of Greenwich, Connecticut. Grand, luxurious mansions appeared, both familiar and strange. I hadn't been here in 5 years. Everything looked the same, still opulent, but I had changed. I was no longer the naive, carefree young woman. I was a woman with a failed marriage, stripped naked, abandoned on a winter night. The car stopped before the imposing iron gate of the Sterling family estate. The gate slowly opened, revealing the familiar white gravel path. The light from the mansion illuminated the sky, warm like a welcome for a prodigal child. But another feeling arose in my heart, not relief, but a burning flame, a flame of pure, cold hatred. Ethan Hayes, Carol, Chloe Hayes. I closed my eyes, engraving those names deep in my heart. I made a vow: the pain, the humiliation they inflicted tonight, I would repay them 100,000 times over. With interest, the car door opened. I took a deep breath of the fresh garden air. I was no longer the weak Sophia Sterling of the past. Tonight, from the ashes of humiliation, a new person had been reborn. Mr. Albright carefully placed the coat back on me, covering the tattered clothes underneath, and helped me out of the car. We stood before the heavy, exquisitely carved solid wood door, the same door I had resolutely turned my back on 5 years ago. My heart churned with mixed emotions. Would my authoritarian grandfather, whom I loved and feared, receive me with open arms or with a cold, reproachful gaze? The heavy door opened slowly, silently. Warm light spilled out, enveloping me. In the central foyer stood my grandfather, Chairman Sterling. He wore silk pajamas, his white hair neatly combed. His dignified face was marked by deep concern. He wasn't sitting in his familiar armchair, but stood leaning on his ebony cane, staring at me. The moment our eyes met, time stood still. In his shrewd eyes, I saw no reproach, no disappointment, only infinite pity and a love he had suppressed for 5 years. I couldn't hold back. I let go of Mr. Albright's hand, stumbled towards him, knelt at his feet, and cried bitterly, "Grandfather, grandfather, I was wrong. I was so wrong." My cries burst forth, violent, containing all the sorrow, pain, and regret I had endured. His ebony cane fell to the marble floor with a sharp sound. He bent down, trembling, his hands, marked by time, gently lifted my face. "You're back, my child. The important thing is that you've come home." His voice was hoarse, his eyes red. He didn't scold me once. His arms weren't as strong as before, but they were still the warmest, safest embrace in the world. Mr. Albright and the staff turned away silently. No one wanted to disturb this tearful reunion. My grandfather helped me up, sat me on the sofa. Mr. Albright quickly brought clean clothes and warm milk. "Take a shower and change. We'll talk when you've warmed up." His voice was calmer, but still trembling. I obeyed, going into the familiar bathroom, unused for 5 years but cleaned daily. Hot steam filled the room, washing away the night's dirty traces. But it couldn't wash away the humiliation and pain etched deep in my heart. Donning soft silk pajamas, I felt as if I had shed a dirty skin. When I returned to the living room, my grandfather was still there. He had changed into more formal attire. On the table was a steaming pot of high-quality green tea. He motioned for me to sit opposite him. In a low, authoritative voice, he said, "Now tell me, what did that man and his family do to you?" And I spoke. I told him everything, without hiding a thing. My 5 years in that small apartment. How I gave up my habits, my hobbies, to become an ordinary wife. Carol's cold treatment. Chloe's laziness. Ethan's cruelty beyond indifference. My inability to have a child. How it became a thorn in their side. And finally, the horrific events of that night. The slap, the humiliating words, Ethan's savage act of tearing my clothes, throwing me out. The more I spoke, the more absurd it all seemed. I, Sophia Sterling, granddaughter of the Sterling Group chairman, raised in luxury. How could I have endured that life for 5 years, all for one word? Love. A blind love that made me foolish, willingly stepping into a fake gilded cage, only to be plucked and abandoned by the very people I cared for. My grandfather listened in silence. His fists clenched, blue veins prominent. His face darkened. In his eyes burned a flame of fury I hadn't seen in a long time. When I finished, he didn't speak immediately. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, as if suppressing a rage about to erupt. "Mr. Albright," he called, his voice icy. "Yes, Chairman. I want you to investigate Ethan Hayes and his family immediately. Everything about them. Their work, businesses, relationships, assets, down to the smallest detail. You have 24 hours. "Yes, sir. I'll take care of it immediately." Mr. Albright bowed and left quickly. The room fell silent again. My grandfather opened his eyes. His gaze softened. "Sophia, do you still hold a grudge against me for being so strict with you that year?" I shook my head, tears welling. "No. Now I understand. It was all my fault. I didn't listen to your advice. I was blinded by love. Love is not a sin, child, he sighed. The problem is you gave it to a man who didn't deserve it. But that's water under the bridge. Consider it a very expensive tuition fee you've paid. The important thing is you're back. From now on, no one can hurt you. I promise. His promise was like a 1,000-ton rock settling my heart. I knew the real storm was about to begin. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had my grandfather, and behind me, the powerful Sterling Group empire. That night, I slept in my old room. It had been preserved exactly as I left it. The princess bed, the white desk, the huge teddy bear my grandfather gave me for my 18th birthday. Everything reminded me of beautiful, carefree times. I lay there but couldn't sleep. Memories of the last 5 years mingled with those of my life in this mansion. I remembered meeting Ethan at a charity gala. He was a young employee, handsome, smart, charming. So different from the rich heirs I knew. He captivated me with his sincerity, his dream of starting his own business. We started dating. I hid my true identity, telling him I was just a normal office worker. He didn't seem to care about my family background. He loved me, or so I thought. He took me to dive bars, gave me rides on his old motorcycle. Those simple dates made me happier than any fancy party. I thought I had found true love. When I decided to marry him, I brought him to meet my grandfather. The meeting was a disaster. My grandfather, with a single glance, told me bluntly, "That man is not right for you. He has ambition written all over his eyes. He doesn't love you. He wants your family's fortune." I argued, fiercely defending Ethan. I told my grandfather he was too suspicious. The argument reached its peak with his ultimatum. With the arrogance of youth and blind faith, I chose to leave to prove him wrong. I cut off all contact, entered a normal life. It was difficult at first, but I tried to adapt, fooling myself into thinking I was happy. But now, with everything revealed, I realized how right my grandfather had been. He saw Ethan's true nature from the very beginning. It took me 5 years. A soft knock. Mr. Albright entered with a tray of snacks. "Miss Sterling, have something to eat. The chairman asked me to bring it to you." I wasn't hungry, but I sat up and ate. I knew I needed strength. Tomorrow's battle would be long. Seeing the exquisite food, I remembered the humble meals, Carol's reprimands. Tears fell again, but this time not from pain. From knowing those dark days were truly over, a new chapter was beginning, one where I would no longer be a victim. I sat in front of the cherrywood vanity and didn't recognize the woman in the mirror. My long hair, once in a simple bun, was now a voluminous mane of luxurious chestnut waves. My pale, haggard face was brought back to life after an intensive overnight treatment. Light, professional makeup concealed the dark circles, making my large eyes look defined and deep. The woman in the mirror was no longer the submissive, patient Sophia. She was the sole heir of the Sterling Group, Sophia Sterling. "Miss Sterling, the chairman is waiting for you in his study," Mr. Albright's voice said from behind me, interrupting my thoughts. I stood, took a deep breath. The jade-colored silk dress, brought by designers that morning, fit perfectly, creating an elegant, seductive, sophisticated aura. I slipped on Christian Louboutin heels. Every step felt firm, authoritative. I hadn't felt this in 5 years. I descended the spiral staircase, walked down the long hallway decorated with expensive art. My grandfather's study was at the end, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. He sat behind a massive solid wood desk, reading documents with glasses. Seeing me, he looked up, took off his glasses, a smile of satisfaction appearing. "Sit down," he said, pointing to the leather chair opposite. "You look impeccable. You finally look like a Sterling again." I smiled, sat down. "What did you call me for?" He didn't answer immediately. He pushed a stack of documents towards me. "Read it. This is all the information Mr. Albright gathered overnight on your ex-husband's family." Trembling, I opened the file. Pages densely printed with text and photos. The first page was Ethan Hayes's resume. I glanced at his work history. The company he directed, Commercial Services LLC, was small, founded shortly after our marriage. What stunned me was the initial capital, $350,000, clearly registered as a personal contribution. $350,000. When I married Ethan, he was just a simple employee, a few thousand a month. How did he get so much? I turned to the next page, the company's financial reports. 4 or 5 years, consistent losses, negative cash flow, debts to banks and suppliers kept increasing. His company was an empty shell on the brink of bankruptcy. So, where did the money for his family's comfortable life, the luxurious apartment, come from? The answer was on the following pages. Bank statements for accounts in the names of Ethan, Carol, and Chloe. For 5 years, a considerable amount was transferred monthly from an unknown account. I looked closer at the name of that unknown account holder. My heart stopped. Sophia Sterling, it was my name. I didn't understand. Apart from household expenses, I never sent them money. How? My grandfather sighed, pointing to a small footnote. This is a trust account your parents set up for you before they died. According to their will, a fixed amount was automatically transferred each month to the account you designated as your allowance. The amount isn't very large, just enough for you to live comfortably, but not excessively. Your parents wanted you to learn to be independent. I was stunned. 4 or 5 years. I had been living off my parents' money without even knowing it. That's right. My grandfather nodded. And that man knew it from the beginning. He asked for your account details to receive the money, then lied, saying it was his hard-earned salary to support the family. Everything clicked. The image of a successful entrepreneur, a family pillar Ethan had so carefully crafted, was an elaborate fraud. He was supporting me and his family with my own money while playing the role of a capable, generous husband. His hypocrisy, his cunning knew no limits. I turned the next pages. My anger grew. The apartment, bought in Ethan's name, was paid for through a shell company. Tracing that company revealed it was connected to a fierce rival of the Sterling Group. They not only deceived you with your money, my grandfather said, his voice harsh, that Ethan Hayes approached you intentionally. It's very likely that behind him is a larger conspiracy against our group. I closed the file, my hands and feet cold. I thought my tragedy was just a failed love story, but it was much darker, more complex. I had been a pawn on a chessboard I knew nothing about. Do you understand now why I told you that you had to be strong? My grandfather looked at me with a mixture of anger and pity. This is no longer your personal problem. It's a war for the entire Sterling Group family. And you, as the sole heir, must not only seek justice for yourself, but also rise up to protect the legacy of the entire family. I looked into his determined eyes. Initial fear and confusion faded, replaced by steely resolve. My grandfather was right. I couldn't be a victim forever. I had to become a warrior. What should I do now? My voice was calm, clear. My grandfather smiled confidently. First, you need an identity with enough weight to make them tremble. He picked up the intercom. Mr. Albright, have the company's lawyer, Mr. Torres, and the group's public relations team come here. Minutes later, a group of people in suits entered, led by Mr. Torres, head of legal, a middle-aged man with a broad forehead and penetrating gaze. My grandfather gave an order. his voice brooking no argument. Mr. Torres immediately prepared documents to sue Ethan Hayes and his family for fraud and embezzlement. At the same time, prepare procedures to recover my granddaughter's assets. He turned to the PR team. In 1 hour, I want you to send a statement to all major media outlets. A statement about the return of my granddaughter and future vice chairwoman of the Sterling Group, Sophia Sterling. The room fell silent. Everyone was stunned by the chairman's swift, authoritarian decision. Me too, vice chairwoman. I tried to speak, but he stopped me with a wave. No buts. This position has always been yours. It's time for you to claim what belongs to you. He looked at me, his gaze a command, an expectation. Get ready, my child. The storm is about to break, and you will be at the center of it. I took a deep breath, nodded firmly. Yes, I was ready. In this game, I wasn't just going to participate. I was going to set the rules. The media storm my grandfather unleashed came faster, stronger than I could have imagined. Just as he ordered. In 1 hour, the headline, Sterling Group heir returns after 5 years, poised to assume vice chairwoman role, was on the front page of every major online newspaper. The article included my professionally taken portrait from that morning. Beautiful, elegant, charismatic. Mr. Albright's phone rang nonstop. Partners, investors, media. Everyone was in an uproar. On the other side of the city, in their apartment, I could imagine the faces of Ethan and his family. Speechless, unable to believe what they were seeing. The wife they had just humiliated, ruthlessly thrown out, the person they thought was a helpless lamb, had transformed into a phoenix, a figure commanding the attention of the entire business world. Their glee from last night would have turned into abject fear. But this was just the beginning. My transformation wasn't limited to my identity and clothes. My grandfather wanted me to transform completely inside and out. A queen must not only wear a crown, he said, she must also have wisdom and guts. The next morning, a team of the best private tutors was summoned to the estate. One taught macroeconomics and business management, another business law and legal affairs, another negotiation and communication, and there was even a personal trainer for martial arts and physical conditioning. My schedule was packed from dawn till late. I immersed myself in my studies like a dry sponge, trying to absorb all the knowledge I'd missed. Financial concepts, complex laws, management strategies. At first, they overwhelmed me. But as if the Sterling family's business DNA had awakened, I learned quickly. My analytical skills, my logical thinking surprised my tutors. In the evenings after classes, I'd sit with my grandfather in his study. He didn't teach me empty theories. He taught me through a lifetime of practical experience, through the game of business. He analyzed competitors, partners. He taught me how to read people's minds, how to use power wisely. Power doesn't lie in how many people you can command, he said. It lies in how many people you can make respect and willingly follow you. His teachings were more valuable than any book. They were a philosophy of life, the guts of a leader. Parallel to my studies, I began physical training. Every early morning, rigorous training with a former Special Forces member, running, weightlifting, hand-to-hand combat. Sweat poured, my body ached, but I never complained. I needed a healthy body, a will of steel to face the coming storm. In just 1 week, I changed. I'd lost weight, but my body was toned, full of energy. My gaze was no longer sad or fearful, but determined, penetrating. My demeanor became confident, authoritative. Even Mr. Albright commented, "Miss Sterling, you now have more presence than the chairman in his prime." The transformation was almost complete. I had identity, knowledge, willpower, and a powerful empire at my back. I was ready to make the first move in my chess game of revenge. One morning, after reviewing company reports, I decided to visit the place I once called home. Without notice, I chose a white sports car from my grandfather's collection. I wore a white Chanel pantsuit, sunglasses, my hair in light waves. When my luxury car pulled up to the old apartment building, heads turned. I got out, removed my sunglasses, and walked into the lobby, head held high. The old doorman, who had looked at me with contempt countless times, now hastily stood, bowing awkwardly. I said nothing, just nodded slightly, went straight to the elevator. I could feel the curious glances and whispers. They were surely wondering who this elegant woman was, and why she looked so familiar. When I rang the doorbell, it took a while for the door to open a crack. Carol peeked out, saw me, and froze. Her expression shifted from surprise and fear to uncontainable anger. What are you doing here?" she stammered. I gave a polite but cold smile. "Hello, Carol. I've come to pick up some personal things I left behind." I didn't wait. I gently pushed past her and walked in. The apartment was the same, still messy, cramped. Ethan and Chloe were in the living room. Seeing me, both were speechless. The TV remote fell from Ethan's hand. Chloe's mouth hung open. Their current appearance was pathetic. Disheveled clothes, haggard faces, a complete contrast to their triumphant air that night. "Hello, Ethan." "Hello, Chloe," I said in an indifferent tone, as if greeting strangers. "Long time no see. You don't look so well." My presence and attitude utterly bewildered them. They just stared. I paid them no mind, went straight to my old bedroom. The room was the same, but not a single ounce of warmth remained. I opened the closet, took out a small wooden box from the deepest corner. It held my parents' mementos, old photos, my father's watch, my mother's pearl earrings. This was the only thing I needed. When I came out, Ethan had regained his senses and stood in my way. Sophia, he stammered, unsure how to address me. I looked at him with emotionless eyes. "Do you have something to say, Mr. Hayes?" My formal address unsettled him. We can talk first. I'm sorry. None of this is what you think." He started singing his old song, lies, excuses. But I was no longer the same person. "Sorry," I scoffed. "Do you think a sorry can erase everything? You don't need to act anymore. Your play is over." I sidestepped him, heading for the door. Carol and Chloe still stood there, speechless. At the door, I stopped, turned to look at them one last time. "Oh, I almost forgot. Starting tomorrow, people from the bank will be coming to your company about the unpaid loans. You'd better get ready. Good luck." With that, I turned and left, leaving behind 3 people petrified with terror and despair. As I walked out, breathing the fresh air, I felt a strange euphoria. This was just a light warning. My play of revenge still had many dramatic scenes ahead. On my way to the estate, Mr. Albright called. "Miss Sterling, our people report a huge fight broke out in that house shortly after you left." I smirked faintly. "Perfect. Let them tear each other apart. Mr. Albright." The psychological warfare was beginning. And now it was time for a real attack. An economic attack. One that would completely destroy Ethan Hayes' paper empire. My transformation and imposing return were just the opening shot. A psychological blow that threw Ethan's family into chaos. But to truly destroy them, I needed concrete actions, a fatal strike at Ethan's already rotten economic foundation. Returning to the estate, without a break, I went straight to the study. My grandfather and Mr. Torres were waiting, the atmosphere serious. A large screen detailed Ethan's company structure and related businesses. According to our investigation, Mr. Torres began, pointing to figures. Hayes' company has debts of nearly $14 million to 3 different banks, all about to mature. He has mortgaged the apartment he lives in as collateral for one of the loans. I frowned. So, that house isn't safe either. If Ethan couldn't repay the debt, the bank would foreclose. That's not all, my grandfather continued in his deep, experienced voice. Ethan's recent contracts are mostly small, minimal profit. His main source of income comes from 2 large contracts with 2 of our subsidiaries. These are contracts he secured because of his relationship with you. I suddenly understood. Despite his self-made man facade, Ethan had been using the Sterling family's reputation to benefit himself behind my back. So, the first step is clear, I said, my voice cold and determined. Mr. Torres, work with the legal team to find the slightest violation in those 2 contracts. A dishonest businessman like him is sure to have loopholes. We will terminate the contracts unilaterally. Mr. Torres nodded. Understood. It won't be difficult. Following procedure, we can also claim compensation for breach of contract. Not necessary, I interrupted. Our goal isn't the money. It's to cut off his lifeline. Do everything according to the law, so he can't say a word. My grandfather looked at me with satisfaction. Good. The attack must be decisive, but it's not enough. We must create greater pressure. Pressure from all directions. He turned to Mr. Albright. Mr. Albright, contact those banks and tell them the Sterling Group will buy all the debts of that company. Both Mr. Torres and I were surprised. Grandfather, why would we do that? I asked. Buying an enemy's debt is like helping him. My grandfather smiled with the cunning of an old fox. Helping him? No. Think about it. If the creditor is the bank, they will follow procedures. They might grant him extensions or negotiate. But what if the creditor is us? We won't give him a single day of extension. We will be the most insistent, relentless creditor. We will hold the power of life and death over his company. Then he will live if you want him to live, and die if you want him to die. A light bulb went on in my head. My grandfather's move was truly masterful. Not only did it shift us from passive to active, but it also put Ethan in a no-win situation. He would face a new, powerful, and mysterious creditor, never suspecting for a moment that I was behind it all. Mr. Albright, I turned to him sharply. When buying the debt, do not reveal the Sterling Group's identity under any circumstances. Do it through a financial intermediary company that has no apparent connection to us. Don't worry, Miss Sterling. I have already prepared such a company, Mr. Albright replied, confident. The plan was perfectly laid out. Pressure from both flanks, one to cut off his income, the other to drown him in debt. I was eager to see how Ethan would get out of this. While my grandfather and I made our first move, I didn't forget the most important task, continuing to investigate Ethan's dark secrets. I firmly believed there were other dark corners he was hiding. I remembered the times he came home late, smelling of alcohol and an unfamiliar woman's perfume. The calls he took secretly on the balcony. My woman's intuition told me. Besides me, Ethan has other shady relationships. I called Mr. Albright. Mr. Albright, could you investigate Mr. Hayes's personal relationships further, especially with women? I want to know how many other people he has deceived besides me. Mr. Albright nodded. Understood, Miss Sterling. The secret investigation resumed. This time, the target was not only his finances, but also his private life. A few days later, our actions began to take effect. Early morning, the Sterling Group's lawyer sent Ethan's company an official notice of contract termination. At the same time, the 3 banks sent Ethan a debt notification, informing him his debt had been transferred to a new creditor, Atlas Financial Investments, the shell company we had created. I wasn't there, but I could imagine Ethan's face receiving 2 pieces of bad news at once. He would surely be frantically calling everywhere, trying to find out who Atlas Financial Investments was and why they were acting so swiftly and ruthlessly. He would never imagine that the person behind it all was the wife he had just abandoned. At the same time, Mr. Albright brought the first information about Ethan's private life, and it was much more terrible than I had imagined. Miss Sterling, Hayes didn't have just one mistress. Mr. Albright said, placing a stack of photos on the table. According to our surveillance over the last 72 hours, he has been involved with at least 3 other women. I picked up the photos, hands trembling with anger. In the first photo, Ethan had his arm around a young model, Laura, at a luxury bar. In the second, he was leaving a 5-star hotel with a wealthy older businesswoman, Mrs. Beaumont, on his arm. In the third, he was tenderly feeding a young university student, Emily, at a coffee shop. Each had a different charm, but one thing in common: they all seemed to be women with money and status. He wasn't just cheating on them for lust, Mr. Albright continued. He saw them as tools to be used. The model helped him access the entertainment world. That businesswoman is the president of a large construction company and could get him lucrative contracts. And that university student, her father is an influential senior official. I put down the photos, feeling nauseous. This man had no heart. He only had calculations and endless greed. He had turned his life into a chessboard, and every woman who came near him, including me, was just a pawn he used and discarded. This fact hurt me more than his betrayal. It showed his rotten, sick nature. "Keep investigating, Mr. Albright," I said, my voice icy. "I want to know everything about these women. I want to know how he scammed them. Perhaps it's time for victims like me to unite." A new, bolder plan began to form in my mind. I was not only going to destroy Ethan, but I was also going to unmask him in front of everyone he had deceived and continued to deceive. I was going to leave him with nowhere to hide. The trap was set, and the prey was starting to panic. But would these women cooperate, or would they also blindly believe this cunning man, as I once did? This battle seemed much more complicated than I thought. While the storm I created was slowly gathering over Ethan, on the other side of the city, in the cramped apartment, his family indulged in brief, fantastical joy. They had no idea what was coming. For them, kicking me out was a great victory. They had gotten rid of the childless daughter-in-law and thought they would soon achieve a life of wealth. As soon as I left, Carol rushed to call a distant relative, a real estate agent. "I need you to sell this apartment quickly," she said, excitement barely contained. "Price doesn't matter, just fast. And you can arrange all the paperwork with my son, Ethan. This house is all his." She believed she had the right to dispose of my property she legally had no right to. Chloe was even worse. She immediately moved into my bedroom, taking over my bed, my vanity, my things. She took selfies, posted them with a suggestive caption, "Finally have my own room. Goodbye to what wasn't mine." She even bragged to her friends about my clothes and bags, which didn't even fit her. Ethan, though initially surprised by my appearance at the house, quickly regained his confidence. He believed I was just angry, putting on a brave face after being abandoned. He couldn't imagine I held all his secrets, preparing a brutal counterattack. He told his mother and sister, "Mom, Chloe, don't worry. Sophia is kind and weak. She's all bark and no bite. I'll let her cool off for a few days at her grandfather's place, and then I'll go get her." By then, she'd have no choice but to obey him. He was still confident in his acting, his manipulation. He believed a few sweet words, a few crocodile tears, would melt my heart. They began planning their future. With the money from the apartment sale, they would pay off Ethan's company debts and buy a villa in a wealthy area. Carol dreamed of daily spa visits, luxury shopping. Chloe planned a lavish wedding with her new, rich boyfriend. They painted a beautiful future, a high society life, but didn't know the foundation of that dream was built on lies and would soon crumble. Their euphoria peaked when a buyer appeared for the house. The agent Carol called, following Mr. Albright's instructions, quickly found a potential client. It was actually a Sterling Group employee posing as a new money tycoon, offering to buy the apartment quickly and at a high price. "Hello, Mrs. Hayes. I'm from the real estate agency. One of our clients is very interested in your apartment. He's willing to pay $750,000 in cash this week." $750,000. The figure almost made Carol faint with joy. She hastily agreed, urging Ethan to prepare the papers. "Hurry up, son. Opportunity has knocked on our door. With this $750,000, our family will completely change." Ethan was happy too, but he still had some sense left. He told his mother, "Mom, calm down. The deed to the house is still in Sophia's name. I have to convince her to sign the transfer papers first." "What's there to convince?" Carol snapped. "Tell her we need to sell the house urgently to pay your debts and avoid jail. She'll be so scared she'll sign it in tears. Just do as I say." As they reveled in the dream of $750,000, the first piece of bad news arrived. The notice of contract termination from the Sterling Group. Ethan read it, speechless. Those two contracts accounted for nearly 70% of the company's revenue. Without them, his company was almost nothing. He frantically called his contacts at the Sterling Group, but no one answered. He didn't understand why his old partner was acting so ruthlessly. He thought it was just an unfortunate coincidence. But soon, 3 letters from 3 different banks arrived simultaneously. Debt notification, notice of creditor transfer, and a demand for payment of all debts within 24 hours. Ethan read the name of the new creditor, Atlas Financial Investments, Incorporated, a completely unknown name. He hurriedly searched online, but there was hardly any information about this company, only that it was an emerging investment fund with very strong capital and famous for its relentless work style. The real panic began. Ethan slumped into his chair. Sweat poured down his forehead like rain. He didn't understand what was happening, why all the bad news was coming at the same time. He felt an invisible hand strangling him. Carol and Chloe, seeing Ethan's pale face, began to worry. "What's wrong, son? What's happening?" Ethan, trembling, told them everything. The dream of $750,000, the dream of changing their lives, vanished in an instant like smoke, leaving only the cold reality of bankruptcy and debt. "What do we do? What do we do now?" Carol wondered, muttering, "How are we going to pay that money? Are we really going to be homeless?" Chloe started to cry. "And what about my wedding? I told all my friends I was getting married in a 5-star hotel." Her selfishness hadn't changed, even at the most critical moment. In his desperation, Ethan suddenly thought of me. Yes, only Sophia Sterling could save him. Her grandfather was a billionaire. One word from her, and everything would be solved. Once again, he clung to the lifeline he had discarded, hastily grabbed his phone, and dialed my number. He didn't know that the person who held his fate in her hands, the mysterious creditor Atlas, was me. He was preparing to beg his enemy. Ethan's call came while I was in my office, reviewing the latest financial report. Seeing his name on the screen, I didn't answer immediately. I let the phone ring, letting his nervousness and desperation resonate. Finally, I pressed answer, but said nothing. "Sophia." Ethan's voice, on the other end, was trembling, pleading, completely different from his usual arrogance. "Can we meet for a moment? I have something to tell you, something very important." I remained silent. My silence seemed to terrify him more. Sophia, please, just think of it as the last time. I was wrong. I'll explain everything. Please give me a chance. I continued my silence. I wanted him to taste the helplessness, the feeling of having to beg, just as I had. Finally, I spoke. My voice was cold, unfamiliar. I have nothing to talk to you about. Don't say that, Sophia, he almost shouted. My company is about to go bankrupt. They're hounding me with debts. Only you can save me. Oh, really? I said, sarcastic. What does your company going bankrupt have to do with me? We'll be divorced soon. It has to do with it. A lot to do with it, he said hastily. It's all because of you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gotten into this situation. Sophia, help me just this once. I promise I'll pay you back for everything. I'll do whatever you want. I laughed. Even in this situation, he was still blaming me. I don't need anything, and I don't have the ability to help you. I lied without blinking. As you can see, I was also kicked out by you and your family, and I don't have a penny. Right now, I'm living off my grandfather's charity. My lie was the most painful blow. It crushed his last hope. He thought I was rich and powerful, and now I was telling him I was also a parasite. No, that can't be, he muttered, desperate. Your grandfather, with all his wealth, he's not going to help you. That's my family's business and has nothing to do with you. I said firmly, I don't have time to talk to you. With that, I hung up. I knew this call would push Ethan's desperation to the limit. A cornered beast is capable of the greatest madness, and I was waiting for that. Would desperation reveal even more terrible secrets, or would it turn into a blind hatred for me? The cat and mouse game had become much more dangerous. My cold rejection was like throwing a bucket of ice water on Ethan's last ember of hope. Desperation transformed into blind rage. He could no longer think clearly. Instead of solving the problem, he directed his fury at his own family. I didn't need anyone watching to imagine the scene unfolding in that apartment. A monumental fight surely broke out. Ethan would blame Carol and Chloe, accusing them of leading him to a dead end. And Carol and Chloe, their dreams of wealth shattered, wouldn't stand idly by. They would accuse Ethan of being useless, incompetent, unable to control his wife, or provide for his family. A family built on lies and self-interest. In the face of the storm, they tore each other apart. Just as I expected. A few hours later, Mr. Albright reported, Miss Sterling, the neighbors have reported a very loud fight at Mr. Hayes's home, with sounds of things breaking. I smirked. Perfect. Let that fire burn brighter. While his family was mired in internal strife, I began my next move. This time, the target wasn't just Ethan, but his entire network of scams. I called the 3 women Mr. Albright had investigated, the young model Laura, the wealthy businesswoman Mrs. Beaumont, and the university student Emily. I didn't reveal my identity. I had Mr. Albright arrange individual meetings, posing as a journalist investigating romance scams in high society. All 3, after some hesitation, agreed. Perhaps deep down, they too harbored suspicions about the perfect man. That was Ethan. The first meeting was with Laura in a high-end coffee shop. Laura was stunning, but her eyes betrayed fatigue. When I mentioned Ethan, she was cautious, insisting he was wonderful, a successful entrepreneur. I wasn't in a hurry. I simply placed a file on the table. Miss Laura, this is the information we have gathered. I think you should take a look. Laura, out of curiosity, opened the file. Inside was evidence of how Ethan had used her fame to secure advertising contracts, then pocketed a significant portion of the commission. There was also an audio recording of Ethan telling a friend that Laura was an airhead, easy to manipulate. As she read, Lara's face grew paler. When she finished, she clutched the file, a flame of fury burning in her eyes. That son of a B asterisk, 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 asterisk. So he was just using me. The meeting with Mrs. Beaumont, the businesswoman, went similarly. Mrs. Beaumont was sharp, experienced. At first, she didn't believe me. But when I presented evidence that Ethan, through her, had secured a major construction contract, then used one of her own subcontractors to embezzle funds, causing serious quality issues and the risk of a major lawsuit, she completely broke down. She had entrusted the project of a lifetime to Ethan, not knowing he would stab her in the back. The last one was the naive university student, Emily. She was the one I felt most sorry for. Ethan had promised to marry her after graduation, ensuring her a bright future. She believed him, gave him everything. But when I showed her photos of Ethan with other women and played the audio recording of him bragging to his friends about conquering the daughter of an influential official, her rose-colored world shattered. She cried bitterly from pain and rage. 3 women, 3 different situations, but all united by the same pain, deceived by the same man. I not only showed them Ethan's true face, but also something more important. You are not alone, I told them. I am also one of his victims. But we can't just sit here and cry. We must unite and seek justice for ourselves. At first, they hesitated, afraid of retaliation, of losing their reputations. But empathy and the flame of hatred united us. We formed an alliance of revenge. Each of us, using our strengths and contacts, began to silently gather more evidence and prepare for the final attack. Laura, through her contacts in the entertainment world, spread negative rumors about Ethan's integrity. Mrs. Beaumont, using her experience and power in business, pressured Ethan's remaining partners to reconsider their collaboration. Emily began to exert subtle influence through her family. The net around Ethan was tightening. He faced pressure not only from his creditor, Atlas Investments, but also from the very people he had deceived. He started to be isolated, marginalized. His company was a sinking ship. Meanwhile, I didn't stand idly by. I decided to deliver a public blow, one that would make it impossible for Ethan to ever hold his head up again. I contacted a prestigious business magazine, agreeing to an exclusive interview. The topic? Not my return, but the dark side of marriages in high society. I knew this interview would be a bombshell, and I was ready to light the fuse. This was no longer just my fight. It was a fight for every woman Ethan had deceived, and we were determined to win. What destructive power would the media bomb I was about to drop have? And cornered, what last desperate move would the beast Ethan Hayes make? The web my alliance and I had woven began to take effect much faster and more forcefully than I had anticipated. Ethan's company, already like a house on the verge of collapse, now had to withstand a storm blowing from all directions. The small partners, hearing the rumors about Ethan's integrity spread by Laura, grew uneasy. One after another, they made excuses to delay orders or demanded immediate payment of invoices. Mrs. Beaumont's company, one of his remaining major clients, sent an official communication requesting a full quality audit of the work done by Ethan's company, threatening to sue if any irregularities were found. His source of income was almost completely cut off. Meanwhile, on the other side, Atlas Financial Investments, that is, us, continued to increase the pressure. Ethan received dozens of calls and emails daily from the creditor demanding a concrete repayment plan. They rejected any proposal, negotiation, or extension, offering only one way out: pay or go to court. Ethan completely broke down. He ran from place to place, knocking on doors of old acquaintances and partners to borrow money. But no one helped him. The name Ethan Hayes had become toxic in the business world. Everyone avoided him like the plague. Ethan's panic reached its peak. He no longer maintained his neat, sophisticated appearance. He was haggard, with a scruffy beard and bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep and worry. And, as an inevitable law, when the pillar of the house collapses, the internal cracks of the family become more apparent. The apartment, once filled with euphoric laughter, now only housed endless arguments. Carol, her dreams of wealth shattered, completely lost patience with her son. She constantly blamed and harassed him. My God, after all I've fed and raised you, look what you've become. You can't even hold on to your wife. The company is bankrupt, and you're up to your neck in debt. What have you ever done right for this family? Every meal became torture. She complained about having to sell her few remaining gold rings to buy food, about not being able to go out for fear of people laughing at her. Chloe was no different. After her rich boyfriend left her upon hearing rumors of her family's bankruptcy, she unleashed all her anger on her brother. It's all your fault, because of your incompetence. I'm in this mess. Great. No wedding, no money, no face to show my friends, she screamed, throwing her plate on the floor. Give me money. I don't care if you steal or kill. Just bring me money. Ethan's life was now a living hell. At the company, harassed by creditors and partners. At home, psychologically abused by his own mother and sister. The arrogant man who thought himself smart and capable of controlling everything was now helpless and miserable. He started drinking heavily. Every night he came home drunk, broke things, then collapsed. The fall of a man was happening slowly, but surely. Meanwhile, I was preparing my bombshell. The date for the interview with the business magazine was finally set. I reviewed the script with my grandfather, preparing for every question, every scenario. My grandfather advised me, you don't need to appear hurt or harsh. Just state the facts calmly. Sometimes the truth is the sharpest weapon. I understood. I wouldn't turn the interview into a personal venting session. I would turn it into a warning message, an inspiring story about the strength of women. The day before the interview, I received a call from an unknown number. I was going to ignore it, but the number called again, insistently. Finally, I answered. Hello. A long silence, only heavy breathing, then a hoarse, weak voice. Sophia, it's me, Ethan. His voice sounded very strange. The confidence and anger were gone, leaving only extreme exhaustion and desperation. What is it? I asked, still cold. I know I have no right to call you anymore, he said, his voice broken. But I don't know who to talk to anymore. I feel like I'm going to die. Oh, you're going to die? I frowned. What new trick was this? No, I'm not acting anymore. I'm too tired. He broke down, crying. It was the cry of a completely broken man. I've lost the company. My friends are gone. My home is a hell. I have nothing left. I was wrong, Sophia. I know I was truly wrong. I lost the only woman who treated me with sincerity. I'm trash, a scumbag. He kept repeating words of self-blame, of belated regret. I listened in silence. I felt no euphoria, only a strange emptiness. Watching a person fall from the top to the abyss, even if it's your enemy, is never pleasant. What's the purpose of your call? I asked, interrupting his crying. I just wanted to hear your voice one last time, he whispered. And I have to warn you about something. Be careful of my mother. That woman is crazy. She said she wouldn't leave you alone. Ethan's warning surprised me a bit. Even in this situation, he thought to warn me. Was it a remaining shred of conscience, or fear that if something happened to me, he would be the first suspect? What is she planning to do? I asked. I don't know. I just heard her muttering she would teach you a lesson, that if she couldn't have it, she would destroy it. Sophia, you have to be very careful. With that, he hung up. The abrupt call left me with a mixture of complex emotions and a vague uneasiness. A greedy, ignorant woman like Carol. What madness would she be capable of when cornered? Ethan's warning, whatever his motive, was a reminder. This fight was not over yet. Sometimes the wounded beast is the most dangerous. Ethan's warning, though vague, was enough for my grandfather and me to heighten our vigilance. A gambler who has lost all their money becomes reckless, my grandfather said, his gaze sharp. Carol has nothing left to lose. We must not underestimate her madness. He immediately increased security staff at the estate and ordered Mr. Albright to monitor Carol's every move 24/7. I also took extra precautions when I went out. The battle was nearing its end, and we couldn't afford any mistakes. On the day of the interview, I arrived at the studio with a completely different mindset. I was no longer a victim seeking sympathy. I was a warrior, a storyteller, and my story would be my weapon. The interview went exactly as prepared. Calmly, coherently, I revealed the whole truth: my husband's fake bankruptcy, his family's conspiracy, Ethan's organized scams. I didn't use harsh words. I simply presented the evidence, audio recordings, bank statements. I also didn't forget to mention the alliance of women who had stood up with me. At the end, I officially announced the establishment of the Sophia Sterling Foundation, specializing in legal and psychological support for women who are victims of marriage scams and domestic violence. I want to turn my pain into action, I said, looking directly at the camera, so that no other woman has to go through what I went through. My interview had a tremendous impact. It completely changed public opinion and generated a strong wave of community support. Sophia Sterling and the Sophia Sterling Foundation became symbols of strength and women's rights. Meanwhile, Ethan's family endured the full force of the storm. The door to their apartment was besieged by journalists. Their phones rang off the hook with insults and reproach. They couldn't take a step outside. The loss of reputation was more terrible than financial ruin, but the contempt and anger of the public seemed to be the final catalyst that pushed Carol to her most demented act. That night, Mr. Albright called me, his voice urgent. "Miss Sterling, something serious has happened. Carol has disappeared from home. Our people saw her take a taxi towards the outskirts, and she was carrying a gas can." My heart stopped. The outskirts. There was an old, isolated, rarely frequented group warehouse there. What was she planning? Are you following her? Yes, but she's very alert and keeps changing cars. We're following as best we can. But Miss Sterling, what worries me is that her target is you. I froze. Just then, I received a text from an unknown number. "Sophia, if you want to save your grandfather, come to the warehouse on the outskirts alone. Don't call the police or you'll regret it." The message was accompanied by a photo. My grandfather, sitting in a chair, hands and feet tied, mouth covered with duct tape. His face looked tired, but his gaze was still firm. I almost fainted. She had kidnapped him. That wicked woman had dared to touch the person I loved most. "Miss Sterling, are you all right?" Mr. Albright's worried voice. "Mr. Albright, my grandfather, Carol has kidnapped my grandfather. She wants me to go to the warehouse alone." I barely managed to stay calm as I explained. "You can't," Mr. Albright shouted. "You can't go alone. It's a trap. But I can't endanger my grandfather. Miss Sterling, listen to me. The chairman has been through a lot in his life. He knows how to protect himself. Now is when you truly need to stay calm. Send me your location and the full text message. I will notify the police immediately and deploy our people to surround the area. Do as she asks, but don't forget that we will be right behind you." I did as he told me. The fear inside me transformed into an icy hatred. Carol, You have crossed the line. I drove alone towards the outskirts. As night deepened, the road became more deserted. The car's headlights illuminated an old abandoned warehouse. I parked, got out. The rusty iron door creaked open. Carol stood there, a lighter in her hand, the red gas can beside her. In the dim light, her face was horribly disfigured, crazed. "You came," she said, with a chilling laugh. "I knew you would come." "Where's my grandfather?" I asked, my voice icy. "Inside. He's still alive." She smiled. "But how much longer he lives depends on your attitude." She stepped back, revealing the scene. My grandfather was tied to a wooden pillar in the center of the warehouse. Around him, she had poured a large amount of gasoline. "What do you want?" I asked, clenching my fists. "What I want?" She laughed like a maniac. "I want you to die. You've ruined everything I had. You took my son, my money, my honor. Now, I'm going to make you feel what it's like to lose the person you love most." "Are you crazy?" "Yes, I'm crazy. You drove me crazy," she screamed, raising the hand with the lighter. "Now get on your knees, bow your head, and beg for my forgiveness, and transfer $250 million to my account. If not, with a single spark from this lighter, you and your grandfather will go to the next world together." She wanted to take us with her. She had nothing left to lose. I looked at her bloodshot, crazed eyes, then at my grandfather. He shook his head slightly, signaling me not to give in. I knew he'd rather die than give in to a villain. In this life-or-death crisis, I had to make a decision, one that would determine my fate and my grandfather's. I stared into Carol's crazed eyes, then back at my grandfather. His gaze was still firm, shaking his head slightly. My heart pounded, but my mind was strangely calm. I knew that even if I gave in, she wouldn't keep her promise. Logic doesn't work on someone who has lost their sanity. "All right," I said. My voice was so calm, it surprised me. "I'll send you the money, but release my grandfather first." Carol let out a wild laugh. "Do you take me for a fool? So that as soon as I let him go, you'll call the police and have me arrested? No way. First, you send the money, and then we'll see. If you don't trust me, how can I trust you?" I said, trying to buy time, quickly scanning the darkness, hoping the police forces were in position. "You're in no position to set conditions here," she snarled, her hand holding the lighter trembling. "I'll count to 3. If you don't send the money, I'll burn everything. 1. Her voice echoed sharply. "Wait," I shouted, feigning extreme panic. Okay, I'll send it. I'll send it right now." Pretending to tremble, I took out my phone, started tapping the screen, simulating the transaction. Carol watched suspiciously. "How much have you sent?" "The $250 million. But such a large transfer takes a little time to process, and I need an authentication code. Give me a few minutes." I tried to give a plausible reason. 2. She had no patience. The flame of the lighter flickered to life, illuminating her crazed face. Just then, a black shadow emerged from behind her. Thud, a loud impact. Mr. Albright, who had stealthily approached, struck the back of Carol's neck hard with a large wooden club. She fell unconscious without even a scream. The lighter flew from her hand. Almost simultaneously, dozens of people burst in from the darkness. Armed police special forces surrounded the entire warehouse. "Miss Sterling, are you all right?" Mr. Albright rushed toward me. "I'm fine. Grandfather." I ran to my grandfather. Police officers quickly untied him. "I'm fine." I hugged him tightly, sobbing. My grandfather patted my back. "I'm fine. My granddaughter was very brave." It was all over in an instant. Carol, still unconscious, was handcuffed and taken away. Her final, most demented plot had failed completely. The kidnapping and attempted arson were the last straw, putting a tragic end to the story of the Hayes family. Carol, charged with multiple felonies, received a severe sentence. She would spend the rest of her life within cold prison walls. Ethan, upon learning of his mother's demented act, completely broke down. He dropped his appeals and silently accepted his sentence. Perhaps deep down, he realized part of the blame lay with his own weakness, greed, and betrayal. Chloe, too, after detention and investigation, faced justice. Though not directly participating in the major conspiracy, her concealment made her an accomplice, and she received her deserved punishment. The life of an idle young lady was over, replaced by prison labor. The fall of the Hayes family was a predictable conclusion, an inevitable consequence of greed and malice. They lit the fire themselves, and in the end, that fire consumed everything they had. After the storm passed, my grandfather and I returned to the estate. The house was still grand and luxurious, but the atmosphere was warmer, more peaceful than ever. My grandfather's health suffered a bit, but his mind strangely cleared. He decided to no longer participate in managing the group. "It's time for this old man to rest," he told me one sunny afternoon. "You have proven yourself. You've done much better than I expected. From now on, the Sterling Group is in your hands." On the day of my official appointment as chairwoman of the group, a grand ceremony was held. Standing on stage, I looked at the hundreds of employees, partners, and people who believed in me. I no longer felt fear or pressure. I felt a great sense of responsibility and pride. I had not let down my grandfather's expectations, nor had I made my parents' sacrifice in vain. But business success wasn't the only thing I achieved. Throughout the legal process, one person silently supported me, both legally and emotionally, Mr. Michael Davis. He was not only a competent lawyer from Mr. Torres's firm, but also a warm, understanding, trustworthy man. We went through the most difficult times together, and gradually a special feeling developed between us. Love came to me for a second time, gently and peacefully. He wasn't overwhelmed by my family background or wealth. He loved the person I was, my strength, my perseverance. By his side, I could be myself, feel truly loved and respected. A year later, we had a small, warm wedding on a sunny, windy beach. We invited only family and closest friends. My grandfather, in his wheelchair, took my hand and gave it to Michael. "Take good care of my Sophia," he said happily, with tears in his eyes. "She's been through so much." I looked at the man beside me, the person I would spend the rest of my life with. I smiled with genuine contentment. My life had gone through a great storm. That storm had swept away everything false and rotten, leaving in its place a clear blue sky and a dazzling dawn. That evening, after the party, with all guests gone, only my grandfather, Mr. Albright, Michael, and I remained in the living room. The atmosphere was quiet, with only the gentle murmur of waves. My grandfather looked tired, but very happy. He looked at me with eyes full of affection. "Sophia, you finally found your peaceful harbor. Now, this old man can rest easy." I took his thin hand, my heart filled with gratitude. If it weren't for you and Mr. Albright, I don't know what would have become of my life. I owe you both my life. My grandfather smiled gently, waved his hand. "There are no debts between family. You are my granddaughter, the blood of the Sterling family. Protecting you is my responsibility." Mr. Albright also smiled. Seeing Miss Sterling happy is the chairman's greatest joy, and mine. We sat together, reminiscing about the past, not with bitterness or hatred, but with deep reflection. Every event, every pain was a lesson, a brick that built the person I am today. But deep in my heart, there was still an unresolved question. Grandfather, I hesitated. How did you know back then that Ethan Hayes was a bad person? How could you see someone's true nature with just one look? My grandfather was silent for a moment. His gaze drifted to the night sea, as if remembering a long-ago story. I didn't know with just one look, child, he said softly. Before you brought him home to introduce him to me, I had already had him investigated. I froze. So you already knew? Yes, he nodded. I knew his family background was not as simple as he claimed. His father was a notorious gambler, full of debts. His mother, Carol, was no saint either. I knew his approach to you was not a coincidence. But at that time, you were head over heels in love. You wouldn't have believed a word. I knew the more I opposed it, the more you would have wanted to follow him. That's why I had to give you that cruel ultimatum. I hoped that the hardships and deprivations of a normal life would bring you to your senses. But I didn't know you would be so strong and patient. Every word was like the last piece of a puzzle, completing the perfect picture. I burst into tears, not from pain, but moved by his silent love and profound calculation. Even when I turned my back on him, he had always been watching over me, worrying. And what about my parents? I asked, trembling. An old pain resurfaced. Was it also related to business conspiracies? My grandfather was silent for a long time. Even the waves outside seemed to hold their breath. Yes, he finally admitted, his voice tinged with infinite sadness. The accident that year was not a simple accident. It was a murder planned by our group's rivals. Your parents paid the price for my success. He closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his wrinkled cheek. That is the greatest regret of my life, Sophia. I couldn't protect my daughter and my son-in-law. That's why I had to protect you even more. I couldn't let that tragedy happen again. The final truth had been revealed. A terrible truth, but one that explained everything. I understood the burden my grandfather had carried for so many years, why he was so strict, why he always tried to protect me. I hugged him tightly. Grandfather, that's all in the past. My parents in heaven surely don't hold a grudge against you. Now you have me, Michael, and Mr. Albright. We embraced grandfather and granddaughter, 2 generations sharing the pain and secrets buried for decades. That night, I understood that family is not just the place where we are born, but the place we return to after the storm, a sanctuary always ready to protect and welcome us unconditionally. After the wedding, my life entered a new chapter, a chapter of true peace and happiness. Michael was a wonderful husband. He not only loved me, but also greatly respected my grandfather. He shared everything with me, from the group's affairs to the small things at home. By his side, I regained the feeling of being a normal woman, loved and protected. The Sophia Sterling Foundation, under my leadership, grew stronger, helping countless women not only with material support, but also by restoring their faith in life. Each of their stories, each of their smiles was a great motivation for me. One day, I received an anonymous letter. The handwriting was clumsy. Out of curiosity, I opened it. To Mrs. Sophia Sterling Davis. I am Ethan's mother, Carol. I am writing this letter from prison. I do not expect your forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you one thing. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Greed blinded me. I destroyed my own family with my own hands. I pushed my son and daughter into prison. I regret it so much. Every night I dream about what I did. I see you crying in the middle of a winter night. I know there are no second chances. I just hope you live happily for us too, a sinner. After reading the letter, my heart was calm. I felt neither euphoria nor pity, only a sense of peace. All the resentment vanished with these words. The past was completely closed. Would this new happiness last long, or had the ghosts of the past truly been laid to rest? Life still had many unpredictable paths ahead. Years later, when the turbulent waves of the past had completely receded, my life flowed in the calm I had so longed for. Michael, and I had a beautiful daughter. We named her Elma, hoping her life would always be serene and free. She was the embodiment of our love, our joy, a ray of sunshine that warmed the entire estate. My grandfather, though elderly, seemed rejuvenated since Elma's birth. His greatest pleasure was sitting in his wheelchair daily, watching Elma babble and take her first steps in the garden. A smile of contentment never left his face. The Sterling Group, under my leadership and with Michael's support, grew even more solid. We focused not only on profits, but also on sustainable values and community activities. The Sophia Sterling Foundation became a trusted institution, a common refuge for thousands of women across the country. Sometimes I'd hear news of people from the past. They said Ethan, after serving his sentence, lived alone, unattached, doing odd jobs. His sophisticated appearance was gone. He had aged. Chloe, after prison, also couldn't find stable work. Hard life stripped her of luxurious habits, making her quieter, more reserved. I was no longer interested in them. Their lives, the paths they chose, were their responsibility. The old hatred had completely disappeared. All that remained was the indifference one feels for a stranger. One weekend afternoon, our family was gathered in the garden. Michael patiently taught Elma to ride a bicycle while my grandfather clapped and cheered. I, sitting on a swing, read a book, watching them with a smile. The scene was truly peaceful and happy. Suddenly, Mr. Albright approached with a somewhat serious expression. "Ma'am, someone wants to see you." "Who, Mr. Albright?" I asked. "Mr. Ethan Hayes." I froze. Ethan, after so many years. Why was he here? "Tell him I'm not here," I replied coldly. I didn't want anything from the past to disturb my current life. But he says it's a very important matter related to Mrs. Carroll's last will. Mr. Albright hesitated. Carroll had passed away in prison from illness a few years ago. Her last will, curiosity piqued, but I was also suspicious. Where is he? He's waiting outside the main gate. I thought for a moment. All right, bring him to the small parlor. Don't let my grandfather and the others know. I don't want to break the family's peace. I went into the small parlor. Ethan sat on a sofa, much thinner, tanner, with gray hair dotting his head. He looked older, more worn than his age suggested. Seeing me, he stood up awkwardly, keeping his head down, not daring to look me directly in the eyes. "Hello." His voice was low. "What are you doing here?" I asked, maintaining a safe distance. "I came to fulfill a final promise I made to my mother." He took a faded wooden box from an old cloth bag, hands trembling, and placed it on the table. "Before she died, my mother asked me to return this to you. She said she had wronged you and your parents. She said this was the only memento she had of their friendship." Out of curiosity, I opened the box. Inside was an old photo album and a few yellowed letters. I turned to the first page of the album. There were photos of my mother and Carol when they were young. They were hugging, smiling brightly. I was stunned. How is this possible? "My mother and your mother, they were once best friends," Ethan said bitterly. This fact hit me like lightning. I flipped through the letters. They were letters my mother had written to Carol, talking about life, love, dreams. In one letter, my mother wrote, "Susan, I think I will have to go to a faraway place soon. I entrust my Sophia to you. Treat her as if she were your own daughter. If later Sophia and Ethan have a destiny together, that will be my greatest happiness. So that was it. Not only were they friends, but my mother had entrusted me to Carol. But why? Why did she treat me like that? Because of greed and jealousy, Ethan replied, as if reading my thoughts. My mother always envied your mother's wealth and happiness. When your mother died, she deliberately cut off all contact and hid this relationship. She wanted you to live in suffering. That way, she could feel pleasure. And when I met you, my mother saw an opportunity, the opportunity to snatch everything she thought your mother had taken from her. I closed the album, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. The tragedy of my life ultimately originated from the resentment of a previous generation. How absurd and tragic. Why are you telling me this? I looked Ethan directly in the eyes to ask for forgiveness. Ethan shook his head, a bitter smile on his lips. No, I dare not ask for your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know the whole truth. I've lived in lies and guilt for too long now. I just want to live in peace. By returning these memories, he considered his last debt paid. He bowed to me again, turned silently, and left. I watched his lonely back. In my heart, there was no longer hatred, but a vague compassion. Everyone must pay for their mistakes. It's just that the price they paid was too high. I took the album, looked again at my mother and Carol, smiling radiantly in the photo. Perhaps in another world, they could have resolved their resentments and become friends again. The unexpected encounter with Ethan and the truth about my mother and Carol's relationship closed the final chapter of the past. It was as if the last piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, completing the full picture of my life, with its bright sides and tragic dark corners. I no longer felt resentment or blamed myself. I learned to accept and forgive, not for them, but so that I could move forward lightly. My life returned to its peaceful course. Work at the group projects for the Sophia Sterling Foundation, and above all, my small family. Every day was like a gift. I cherished every moment with Michael, watching my daughter Elma grow, and seeing my grandfather smile. That was the most precious wealth, something no money could buy. So, what do you think? Has a family secret ever completely blindsided you, changing everything you thought you knew? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.